The private jet landed quietly in Mactan, Cebu, carrying wealth few could imagine and a health crisis no one expected. Security swarmed the tarmac, flashing lights reflecting off polished shoes and crisp suits. But beneath the surface of luxury, an unseen fault waited, one that would reveal a quiet, unspoken truth about courage, humility, and the humanity of ordinary Filipinos. Inside the hospital, the air smelled of antiseptic and tension. Nurses hurried past, charts clutched to their chests. Protocols were strict, written in manuals thicker than any novel. Yet, as a group of doctors prepared for the Saudi prince's arrival, the system itself seemed fragile. Even the most detailed procedures could not account for the unexpected chaos that was about to unfold. Moments after stepping into the emergency wing, the prince collapsed, a sudden loss of consciousness silencing the sterile hum of machines. Alarms blared. The monitors blinked. Security staff froze, unsure whether to obey orders or act on instinct. The hospital, accustomed to high-profile patients, had never seen a situation spiral so fast. It was a collision of privilege, protocol, and the fragile human body. Dr. Hernandez barked instructions, her voice slicing through panic. Airway for rapid assessment. But the hospital's bureaucracy moved slower than the seconds slipping through their fingers. Every rule required signatures, verification, and confirmation, yet someone had to act. And when systems fail, the weight of decision falls not on policy, but on the people willing to step forward. Maria, a Filipino nurse with 12 years of experience, had not been on the official roster for the prince's care. She was assigned to a different floor, handling routine patients and paperwork. But the moment she heard the alarms, something stirred in her, a reflex that transcended job descriptions. Without a thought, she ran toward the emergency room, her heart pacing with urgency only adrenaline can justify. By the time Maria reached the room, the prince's face had turned pale. His chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. Security hesitated, unsure if intervention would break protocol. Maria ignored their stares. Hands trembling, she knelt beside him, checking airway and pulse. Every second counted. Every hesitation could be fatal. In that instant, it wasn't protocol that mattered. It was simple, raw human action. The chief physician approached. Confusion etched across his face. Who authorized? He began. Maria met his gaze steadily. No one's authorized. He needs help. In the sterile, controlled environment of a world-class hospital, rules had their place. But when life hangs in the balance, authority is secondary. Courage, skill, and compassion take its place, quietly defying the hierarchy around them. She directed nurses to start CPR, improvising where equipment lagged. A monitor beeped sporadically, defying expectations. Oxygen tanks were misplaced. The electronic chart froze mid-update. The prince's security team argued, insisting only assigned staff intervene. Maria's voice cut through the tension. If we wait for paperwork, he dies. Right now, we act. Her words carried the weight of inevitability. Outside the room, the hospital manager paced, calling for approvals and signatures. The bureaucracy of privilege struggled against the urgency of reality. Each delay risked the life of the man whose wealth had commanded the room moments before. But inside, Filipino hands moved with quiet precision, bridging the gap between rules and morality, showing that humanity sometimes exists outside the pages of manuals. The prince's breathing faltered again. Maria adjusted his oxygen mask, her training a silent ritual. She whispered for him to hold on, though she knew he could not hear. Around her, colleagues watched, hesitant to cross the invisible line of authority. Yet in that room, with lives measured in heartbeats, the line between compliance and courage blurred, and human instinct rose above protocol. Minutes stretched into eternity. Dr. Hernandez administered emergency medication, but it was Maria's steady hands, keeping 4 lines clear and monitors functioning that mattered most. Every gesture, every small decision, was a lifeline. It was not heroism celebrated in headlines. It was quiet, patient, persistent action, carried out by someone whose name few would remember, but whose impact would not be forgotten. A translator whispered to the security staff, explaining that the prince had a known heart condition. The weight of recognition pressed on them. These were not ordinary minutes, There were moments in which wealth, status, and power were meaningless. The prince, a figure of global prestige, now depended entirely on the skill and humanity of a nurse who had never been on his team. Some of the hospital staff argued, pointing to manuals, checklists, and chain-of-command protocols. Maria remained undistracted, moving fluidly between tasks. Her eyes scanned for signs, her hands precise and deliberate. In every suppressed rule, in every ignored hierarchy, the truth became evident. In crisis, humanity cannot wait for bureaucracy. It asserts itself quietly and insistently. Outside, the media began to gather, unaware of the drama unfolding inside. Cameras flashed in anticipation of the prince, expecting spectacle. But inside, spectacle had no place. It was humility, competence, and courage that commanded the room. No one would know the names of those who saved a life, yet their actions carried weight far beyond the confines of the hospital walls. Finally, the prince's pulse stabilized, shallow at first, then stronger. He coughed weakly, eyes fluttering open. Maria held his hand for a brief moment, grounding him with quiet reassurance. Around her, the hospital staff exhaled collectively, tension dissolving into relief. The rules had been bent, the hierarchy ignored, but life had been preserved. Humanity had prevailed where protocol had faltered. The chief physician, once rigid with authority, approached Maria. Words failed him. A nod was exchanged, a silent acknowledgement of courage that defied titles and positions. Security staff, previously tense, relaxed. The hospital manager stepped back, realizing that no form, no approval, no checklist would replace decisive, compassionate action. This was a lesson learned not from manuals, but from witnessing life itself. In the following hours, the prince received careful monitoring and treatment. Every movement, every test, was guided by nurses and staff whose names were largely unknown. Maria returned to her regular duties quietly, almost as if the event had never occurred. No applause, no recognition. Yet in the corridors, whispers of her bravery began to circulate, a quiet testament to the Filipino spirit. Later, the prince reportedly asked about the nurse who had intervened. Hospital staff hesitated to give names, unsure if recognition was appropriate. But the message was clear. No matter one's status or wealth, life could be saved by the courage and skill of those unseen, unheralded, and committed to the quiet work of humanity. Word of the incident reached local news outlets, highlighting the extraordinary calm and professionalism of hospital staff. Yet, amidst the headlines, the narrative of wealth and authority remained dominant. Few noticed that it was not the prince's entourage, nor the hospital's strict protocols, that had saved him. It was a Filipino nurse, acting out of instinct, training, and moral clarity. Maria returned home that evening, exhausted. Her uniform bore the faint smell of antiseptic and sweat. She did not speak of the incident to her family. There were no medals, no fanfare, no social media mentions. But in quiet reflection, she understood the weight of what had happened. In a room dominated by foreign power and rigid procedure, human compassion had quietly prevailed. Meanwhile, the hospital administration convened, reviewing procedures, signing reports, and noting every deviation from protocol. Every rule had been technically broken, yet the outcome was undeniable. A life had been saved. In the sterile rooms of governance and policy, one truth became evident. Systems exist to serve humans, not the other way around. Security staff, once anxious and protective, developed a newfound respect for the hospital team. The prince's aides, accustomed to commanding compliance, had witnessed a reversal of expectations. Here, the most powerful figure in the room had become the most vulnerable, and those without rank, authority, or recognition had become the agents of salvation. Back in the emergency room, the monitors ticked steadily, reflecting stability. Maria checked the charts one last time, making minor adjustments, ensuring continuity of care. Her presence was quiet, understated. The hospital's hierarchy, momentarily irrelevant, had made space for her judgment, patience, and humanity to act where protocol could not. For weeks afterward, colleagues reflected on the incident. Some called it luck. Others noted the extraordinary training that enabled rapid intervention. Yet all agreed on the deeper truth. When privilege and authority meet human fragility, it is often ordinary courage that tips the scale. Life, after all, is impartial. Humanity, however, chooses to intervene. The prince returned to Saudi Arabia, health restored, entourage intact. Yet the story left a mark in Cebu, in the hospital corridors, and in the hearts of those who witnessed it. The quiet heroism of a nurse, acting without expectation, without protocol, without recognition, became an enduring testament to resilience and moral clarity of Filipino humanity. Maria continued her routine, tend to patients with the same care as before. But something had changed, a deeper awareness of the invisible impact one person could have in moments that defy expectation. Rules and protocols remained, but she knew that the true measure of competence was moral courage, applied when systems falter and lives hang in balance. Hospital leadership eventually acknowledged the incident internally, praising staff discretion and judgment. Yet no awards were given publicly. The narrative of authority and wealth remained dominant outside the hospital walls. And perhaps that was fitting. Filipino courage often exists quietly, uncelebrated, proving that real heroism requires neither audience nor recognition, only action when it matters most. Months later, a young nurse asked Maria how she had known what to do. She simply replied, "You act. You care. You don't wait." In her words, the philosophy of Filipino humanity shone clearly. When bureaucracy fails and privilege hesitates, compassion becomes the ultimate protocol, bridging the gap between rules and what is right. The story of the Saudi prince in Cebu was retold in whispers, in brief mentions, in quiet nods between nurses and doctors. Each retelling highlighted the tension, the moral choice, the courage it took to intervene. And in each retelling, the central truth endured. Filipino humanity had quietly triumphed over authority, protocol, and expectation, leaving only dignity and life in its wake. In the end, no one wrote books about the nurse who saved a prince. No statues were erected, but in every heartbeat she touched, in every life preserved silently, her action spoke louder than any policy, any procedure, or any entitlement. That day in Cebu, the world witnessed a simple, unshakable truth. Human compassion can triumph where wealth and authority cannot.